Hello and welcome back to the channel. Have the Gladiator back in the shop because I have an issue that has come up since I installed the new drive shaft in on my Gladiator. What I've come to find is when Jeep designed the JL and the JT and they came out with the FAD, the front axle disconnect, most of us figured it was just another quick grab at mileage, trying to improve mileage numbers, but it was because when they designed the JL and then the JT platform, the angle between the pinion pointing up toward the transfer case and then the transfer case yoke actually pointing upwards because it tilts down in the back, they increased that angle by 9 degrees and pretty much put themselves in a position where there was no Driveline that was going to survive that long term. JKs were, the front axle was spinning all the time. The front drive shaft spun all the time. So when I put ripped this axle apart and put 513 gears in it, I had the opportunity to delete it and go with one-piece RCVs. I chose to. I knew that it would definitely put extra wear on the factory drive shaft, which only lasted about 35,000 miles before it went. But once I put this this new drive shaft in, once I get to about 45 miles an hour, I start to get a hum coming from the front, from the drive shaft. No vibration, no actual vibration you can feel, but there is definitely a hum. Now, if you see my pinion there, you can see that the pinion is basically pointing almost straight back. That is because with the lift, I've got 4 inches of lift on the front here. The axle has to be tipped back to get 5.5 degrees or so of positive caster so that it handles correctly. I could try and lose some of that caster and tip that pinion up a little bit. That may help. But after talking to tech support at Adams Drive Shaft, they highly recommend that you do not delete the FAD because of that. I guess this is an issue that's also being run into, especially with Wrangler 390, the JL 392s. The 392s, if you're not aware, are all-wheel drive. There is no 2-wheel high, 4-wheel high with the JL 392s, and that's because being they're running Dana 44 axles, they had to distribute the power to all 4 wheels to basically be able to make it so that it could handle the power. Now there is no FAD on on those front axles. They have one-piece axle shafts on the passenger side. As a matter of fact, this one-piece RCV will fit a 392. But the issue then they're running into is once you lift those Wranglers, they really almost have no option to be able to eliminate that front drive shaft from spinning. So it's something that they're trying to figure out. For me, in my scenario, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my front drive shaft for now until I go through and I rebuild the front axle. I need to put ball joint deletes in. I'm due for a fluid change on the front axle, and my RCVs need to be rebuilt. The ball bearings and cages that are in the RCV bell are worn. I'm starting to get clicking and popping when I turn the wheels and I'm moving at slow speeds. So they're time for a rebuild, and I have the rebuild kits for those. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm not going to put them back in. I'm going to put the factory axle shafts back in and put my FAD back in, because the reality is this Jeep spends more time on the road than off the road. So I was just kind of wanting to make a brief video. Not really anything technical going on, just some discussion, some information for people, because there's a lot of different factors that come into play here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and lift the Jeep up, and we're going to come back in. All right, so we have the Jeep up in the air. So again, if I was to back off on some caster, I could point this pinion up a little more toward the transfer case, but at that point I'm gonna sacrifice handling of the vehicle. So there's a fine line, there's kind of a dance you have to do there. But the issue lies in the fact that this yoke points up so much, and as you can see how the transfer case tips back and down, that's what creates the problem. So the issue lies in, you know, which is going to be most important. Eliminating the vibration and making the vehicle more street drivable. You know, obviously, you know, if you go up to 1-ton axles or something along those lines, you have lockout hubs, so you eliminate that issue. For me, I wanted to eliminate the FAD because I remember the Comanches and Cherokees of the 80s when they had the vacuum axle, front axle disconnect, and having issues with that, and didn't want to have to deal with that going forward. But it looks like the reality is this vehicle spends more time on the road than it does off, that I'm going to have to go back to having that front axle disconnect. Now, RCV does make a 2-piece RCV axle shaft for the passenger side that you can then keep your FAD and not have to worry about that. That might be an option down the road, but right now I think I'll just go back to my factory axle shafts. So there are a few factors, as I mentioned before. I brought the Jeep up, and I apologize for this video just being all talk and just bouncing around a little bit. There's a lot of factors that come into play here. Now, I've got 513 gears in the axles with 37-inch tires. This is a Rubicon, or even if it was a Sport. If I was running 37-inch tires and I had kept the factory 373s or even the factory 410s on a Rubicon, I may not have a vibration issue, because that would slow the drive shaft down. The drive shaft would be spinning at a much slower speed. There is the possibility that that would not then become an issue. Or even with my 513s, if I was running 40s, which at some point I plan on going to, it's possible that that could slow the drive shaft speed down enough that it might not be an issue, or really be noticeable. But you know, that's something that's all going to depend on everybody's build. Now, when I talked to Adams Off-Road, and something I almost forgot, they said that this problem is primarily with anybody that does a lift 3 inches or more. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm at 4 inches. I've got a 3-inch rock crawler lift, and I added a 1-inch spacer to take the rake out, because I have one of their early Pro X lifts, which had quite a bit of rake in it. They maintained a lot of the factory rake with that lift. They've since changed that, but so I'm at 4 inches on the front. And if I was below 3 inches, if I was just running like a 2-inch Mopar lift or a 2.5-inch kit, chances are I probably would not even notice it as well, regardless of my gearing and my tire size. So there's definitely factors that come into play. So I guess really the question is whether you delete the FAD, whether it's worth doing or not. I personally, for me, I feel if I could get away with not having the FAD, it would be the way to go. I would much rather not have the FAD in there. I'd much rather just have a 1-piece shaft, run it like I do my JK, or did my JK. My JK's got tons on it now with lockouts. But it's really going to be depend on anyone's build, whether that's a way to go or not. And it's definitely something you're going to have to think about. If anybody's deleting that and going with an aftermarket drive shaft. The aftermarket drive shaft gives you a lot more clearance for suspension travel, but even that double cardan joint at the transfer case can't handle as sharp of an angle as the factory CV, but that factory CV is even going to fail. So just something to think about. I'm going to go ahead and remove this drive shaft so I can drive this vehicle without any worries. And then once I get around to doing my ball joint deletes and pulling the axle shafts out and all that, I got to do front brakes on it as well. I'll make a video of that, and then the drive shaft will go back in at that point in time. All right, thank you for watching. I hope this might help anyone that's looking at possibly wondering if they should delete their FAD, they should keep it. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. If you like what we're doing here, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.